Let's get a fresh voice in on this conversation. Joining us now is former U.S. Attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Barbara McQuade. Barbara, show us the forest.
Yeah, I think that's a really important question because I think you really can get bogged down in the minutia here. Looking at this from the big picture, the prosecution fully expected this day to come. They knew that Michael Cohen was an imperfect witness, far, far from perfect, that he had a lot of baggage. It may be the reason the feds walked away from this case, because he is an essential witness. But what they did in advance is to prepare for this moment by building scaffolding for him before he ever testified, by bringing in documents, phone records, other witnesses, so that when he came in to tell his story, he was really providing more context and linking the dots as opposed to telling the jury something they hadn't already heard. And so do they need to believe him? Yeah, about some of these details. But big picture, so much of it is already in evidence that they've already made a circumstantial case, I think, even without Michael Cohen. I think he's an essential witness, but you don't have to believe that he's a good person. You might think he's a despicable person, but I imagine that in closing argument, the government is going to say, you don't have to like him. In fact, we don't even like him. And he's not someone we chose to put up here. He's someone Donald Trump chose to be his closest confidant, his personal lawyer. This is the kind of person Donald Trump chose to associate himself with. And he admitted to you that he lied on a number of important occasions. But look at all the facts and how they match up with his testimony. Look at the documents, look at the other witnesses, and I think you can conclude beyond a reasonable doubt that the case has been made here.
Michael Cohen is testifying again. Blanche is asking him about the $130,000 payment that he made to Mr. Davidson. He asks, you learned from Mr. Davidson along the way that another news organization was interested in buying her story. Cohen answers, after we had failed to transfer $130,000 as per Mr. Davidson's cutoff date. Blanche, the news organization was ABC, correct? Cohen says correct, and I believe it was also the Daily Beast. Cohen also adds it was ABC. Blanche, in essence, the same amount of money Mr. Davidson was trying to get from you, $130,000. Who was the reporter? Blanche asks. And I'm waiting for Michael Cohen's answer. So it's interesting that, it's John Santucci, who was a reporter for ABC News on the Trump campaign. Cohen says, John Santucci, I spoke to Mr. Santucci about it, and he contacted me. When did you speak to him? And he also asked me whether or not I was responsible or knew that they were responsible. So they're talking about the Karen McDougal payment. They're talking about the $130,000. It's interesting that so much of this cross has not centered around this $130,000 payment.
That networks don't pay money that not in my 40 decades, whatever. Networks don't pay the way the tabloids, and they just don't pay for stories. So this is not a credible story unless something very strange happened here.
Unless it was a news adjacent kind of.
A Dancing with the Stars
$130,000, the same amount he's saying.
Well, we're going to continue to watch this. You talked about that recording you made with Mr. Davidson, yes, in October. What did you say to Santucci? I mean, Barbara McQuade, so much of this, just the idea about the payment and who they made the payment to, and that another news organization was interested. We've all heard this before. Is this just a reminder? Is this going somewhere that you can see? What we have seen throughout the course of this cross, again, putting something out there, it's almost like a reminder, and then moving on to something else that a number of people have found hard to follow.
Yes, although, as Chuck was saying earlier, a lot of this is not to deliver the death blow. It is really just building ammunition that the lawyers can use in their closing arguments. And so getting certain admissions and then moving on really is the textbook way to do a cross-examination. There may not be the aha moment while the witness is testifying, but the lawyer can bring it all together in closing argument. And in fact, as Chuck said, it is often considered poor form to ask one question too many, the one that really makes it clear to the jury the point that you're making and hits them over the head with it. because that gives the witness an opportunity to also see where it's going and to weasel their way out of it with, giving some words to sort of suggest, maybe yes, maybe no. And so sometimes what a lawyer will do is just ask sufficient questions so that they can link those things together in closing argument. I also think it's important to remember that what we hear on cross-examination here is not the end of the story. The government is going to have an opportunity to do a redirect exam. And so to the extent the jury has been left with any misunderstandings about the facts here or things that don't seem quite clear, the government will have a chance to sort of rehabilitate Michael Cohen, that have him admit to the things that are lies, but to explain the things that are true. I think one thing in particular I expect to hear more of in the redirect is the issue regarding Michael Cohen's guilty plea in the tax matter, where he said that he doesn't think that he should have been prosecuted for that claim. As I've heard him explain it before, as he explained on direct, and I imagine we'll hear on redirect, he does not dispute any of the underlying facts. He says, yes, all those things are true. I just don't think this is a case that should have been prosecuted and brought against me. That's a matter of opinion as opposed to a matter of fact. And I think that's such an important point that I imagine we'll hear more about it on redirect in an effort to rehabilitate his credibility with regard to that issue.
There's no doubt in your mind they'll do a redirect?
Oh, I think so. I think that they will, try to clean up a few of these things. I suppose, sometimes it's very powerful to try to stand up and just say, no further questions, Your Honor, that sort of suggests that, they didn't touch me. I'm good. I'm fine with that. But I do think that there have been some suggestions of misconduct here or lack of candor or credibility that I think can be cleaned up on redirect by explaining why these things were the way they were. So I would expect that they would. Now, what I would advise they do is to be a little more focused than we've seen Mr. Blanche be. It may be a deliberate strategy by Mr. Blanche to be sort of meandering and all over the place in an effort to wear down Michael Cohen and get him frustrated, tired, angry, off his game a little bit. But I think that on a redirect, you'd want to be a little more focused, cover just the important matters, get in, get out, and sit down.